Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Odyssey podcast, where me and brother trek through cinema on a quest to find the best film ever made. And this week, we're talking about In the Heat of the Night.
It's a hot, hot night out there.
In the heat of the night.
The score's pretty good in this movie.
Oh, the music is great.
Yeah.
Quincy Jones produced all the music in the movie.
Let's just get it out there, front and center. It's a good movie.
Oh yeah. This is definitely a good movie. Deserves it. It's 8.0 on IMDb and all the fun stuff it's collected over the years. Very good movie.
How many Oscars?
5 Oscars.
The 5 Oscars.
5 Oscars, including Best Picture. It's a really good movie.
Well, here's the thing. I would say it's a good movie. I don't think it's really good.
You don't think it's
I think it's
really
good. I think it's fun. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be that guy that has been spoiled by decades of television, but this feels like a long episode of like Law and Order, because it is a police procedural,
yeah, it's a
right?
police procedural,
mystery thriller. In terms of like the story, it's really well acted. It's a compelling little mystery, but that's not why we're here. It's because this movie is
heavily themed,
and is very much confronting racism in America in 1967, and I don't know if it's the second or third film we've come to that deals directly with racism in America, because I know we've done Do the Right Thing, and is this only the second one?
Well, no, because there was themes of it in Forrest Gump.
Yeah, a little bit,
but directly. Well, 12 Angry Men had a little bit of it.
A little, yeah, but I'm talking about, like, Do the Right Things level of, we're talking directly about
There's not a lot there's, on Do the Right Things level, I think this is going to be, just this and Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
And Do the Right Thing is probably even more than this.
Yeah.
Because it talks at it from, more than just two sides. It gets more encompassing.
And that's the thing about Do the Right Thing, is it's very much a critique on race in America, whereas this is a pretty compelling mystery thriller that is themed heavily in racism in the South, in America, and how these two very different police officers have to kind of put aside their differences a little bit to get the case done.
Yeah.
And I like the movie because it can really work just as a police procedural movie. But I think you do have to be pretty tone deaf not to see all the racist themes in it.
Well,
or the race themes in it.
Well, I mean, it's more than just the themes, it's part of the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think it, I don't know if I want to hold it against the movie, that its themes are kind of like really, really front and center.
I wouldn't hold it against the movie. I mean, it's based on a novel, and I'm very sure the reason the movie was made was specifically for these reasons. I mean, the producers of the movie had to kind of lie to United Artists about how much money the movie would make, because they knew they could not release this in the South.
Oh.
And in its initial theatrical run, it was not released in south of the Mason-Dixon line.
I see.
When they were filming the movie, they only filmed, I think, a week south of the Mason-Dixon line. Because Sidney Poitier said, nah, hell nah.
Hell nah.
Nah, hell nah. But,
do you want to give the quick rundown of the movie?
Sure. I'm not going to spoil, I guess, who the killer is. I'll just quick rundown of the plot.
Well, I mean,
we'll
I
get
feel
to
like
it.
we have to talk about it eventually, but we'll do that later.
Yeah. So, the basic rundown is a black Philadelphia police detective is mistaken as a suspect of a local murder in Sparta, Mississippi. And while there, the out-of-his-depths sheriff, Bill Gillespie, enlists this detective, Mr.Tibbs, to help him unravel this murder of a very wealthy white man who has come to town to build a new factory?
It's a factory.
It's a factory?
I don't know what kind of factory it is, but it's a factory.
I'm going with it as a tumbleweed factory. Because this is a dead-end town if there ever was one.
Jesus.
But yeah, so basically that's what it is. This detective gets enthralled into this mystery and he has to help solve it. Half to clear his name and half because he's involved now. He needs to solve it.
He clears his name pretty quick in the whole setup of the movie. But he kind of gets enthralled in the case and feels like he has to kind of help them out because the sheriff, Bill Gillespie, is way in over his head.
Yeah, this town really feels like a town where the worst thing you would arrest somebody for is like, oh, a couple of guys got into a bar fight. You know, this doesn't seem like a town where it's like there's a high murder rate or anything like that.
No. Or if there's a high murder rate, just kind of sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, this is a swept under the rug kind of establishment.
It is very much a swept under the rug kind of establishment.
And the sheriff, Bill Gillespie, though, he seems like he doesn't want it to be that way. Because he's the new sheriff. That's what I got out of the context of the movie, is he's the new sheriff, and also he's not like the last sheriff, who was a lot more, you just shoot the guy. And then he can't defend himself, thus he is guilty. That's how the whole town kind of seems like to me, like before Gillespie became sheriff.
That's kind of the setup we get in the movie when Tibbs and Gillespie are talking to Edcott. Mm-hmm. Who is the cotton mogul in the local area, because we have to have those themes going on where you roll up to Edcott's big ass southern plantation
that is a cotton picking plantation. You wanted to know something about that? You know how I mentioned they only filmed south of the Mason-Dixon line once? It was the cotton picking scene.
God damn it!
It was they filmed in Sparta, Illinois. Or Sparta, Indiana, or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were like, there's no cotton plantations that look right for the movie. So we're going to go to Tennessee and we'll do it. And Sidney Poitier, rightly, was like, oh, hell the fuck nah. And they were like, no, you're coming with us. He's like, all right. And then he slept with a gun under his pillow the whole time. Sidney Poitier did not enjoy his trips to the South. He did not fuck around. But, yeah, and also, I kind of want to talk about Sidney Poitier real quick.
All right, go for it.
Because this is the first time I've ever seen him, like, act in a film. I've seen him, like, in documentaries about, film history, things like that. But he's really good in this.
He is.
And it's like, he's not, like, over the top. He's not hammy. Because this is, like, in 1967, right?
1967.
And he had been acting since, like, I think, like, the late 40s, or at least in the 50s. I know that much. And a lot of the times when I think of acting of this era, especially from career actors at that point, you get people like, Charlton Heston, who kind of is playing a character in every movie he's in, and they're all Charlton Heston.
He's playing Charlton Heston in every Charlton Heston movie.
Yeah, but Sidney Poitier really does seem to have, like, real depth and a real range in this film, and he's really likable and really charismatic in the role as Mr. Tibbs.
Mm-hmm.
Also, every time he says his name...
Officer Mr. Tibbs.
Officer Mr. Tibbs. What do they call you in Philadelphia?
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Voted number 60-something best line in cinema history.
Really?
I think so.
I mean, it was a really good line.
It is like, it's just him saying his name, but it's the best, like, fuck you in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, like, fuck you moments in this movie, and they're all great.
Oh, yeah.
Every last
actually,
one.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of those in this movie, and they're pretty good, honestly.
But yeah, so, where do we want to go from here? Where do you want to start?
I don't know. It's the opening setup of the movie.
Where we
the
have...
opening shots, I thought they were pretty good, actually. Especially
the tasteful hiding of the boob line in the windowsill.
Yeah, and like the weird like fast forward zoom in on the back of the truck.
I thought
the car.
My fucking disc was broken. No meme.
I thought it was cool.
And the thing is, I saw the trailer and it did the same thing, and I was like, oh, maybe the trailer's fucked up. And I saw it in the movie. I'm like, no, it is just like that. Man, this is a little too hip for me.
Yeah, you got a little artsy there.
It's a little French for my taste.
A little French.
Dude, I'm sorry. When
There's a couple of shots in this movie kind of cool.
There are a lot of them.
The ending shot with the train I thought was really cool.
Oh, where it like pulls way the fuck out when it's riding away?
But it's like really zoomed in and it's kind of got this weird like motion to it. Where it looks like almost like he's like a cardboard like cutout in the train.
Yeah.
it's like a miniature or something. Then it zooms all the way out. And I'm like, I can't tell if they cut somewhere in there from a miniature to an actual train.
You're like, did they morph this somewhere? What the fuck? Man, the movie is... I'm trying to find a good way to approach the movie other than I really liked it and Sidney Poitier was really charming. I mean, the opening sequence of the movie is really good because it really does play up as like this setup you would get in like a like a TV show today, right? You introduce all the characters. You don't see the Mr. Tibbs until like way later, right?
It kind of plays like a pilot.
Yeah, like a pilot of a TV series, right?
Yeah.
You know, we introduce all our little group of characters, and we don't see our main character. You don't see Sidney Poitier until, like, what, 10, 15 minutes into the fucking movie?
Yeah, basically you're following, what was that officer's name?
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, you're following, Sam Wood, Officer Sam Wood, played by Warren Oates.
Warren Oates.
I have no idea who that guy is.
He's famous.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Oh, my bad.
he was in some Peck and Paw movies.
My apologies, Warren Oates. But, you're following, basically, Officer Wood's, like, routine at the end of the night, you know, it's like 12, 2 o'clock, somewhere in there.
Late as fuck.
And, you know, you're following his routine. He's at, like, the local diner. You know, he gets his Coke and his lemon pie.
Ah, the lemon pie. That is a theme in this movie. That is a motif.
Yeah, it comes back. And he's getting it from, like, this kind of strange, diner worker.
He's this really, like, tall, skinny, lanky kind of kid. I think his name's, like, Ralph or something.
Yeah, and, basically, Officer Wood takes off from there, goes patrolling through the city. And I really like those shots of the car where it's like just the headlights and it's pitch black outside.
And it's just cruising.
Yeah, it's just cruising around. Did you like those shots?
I love the lighting in this movie.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of it that's this really heavy, dark lighting. And it's coming in, it really feels like a noir film. And there's shots like that where when the shots are done at night, everything just feels like you're just in another world. Right?
Well, to me, it just it feels like anything could like come out of the darkness, right? Like there's
it's like All the President's Men, where Deep Throat walks out of the fucking shadows.
I mean, you know, it reminds me of us being up in the high desert at night.
Oh yeah.
You know, like there's just nothing. Like there's no anything out there. It looks like the world just ends like 10 feet in front of you.
Oh yeah.
And so he's making his way through the streets of the town real slow, like he's got some music playing. He pulls up in front of this house, and there's a lady in the house.
Yes.
She is buck-ass naked.
She is the definition of jailbait.
It turns out that Miss Dolores is later found out to be 16 in this movie.
Yes. And she's, and apparently it's like just a thing. She just parades around buck-ass naked.
Her brother, that she lives with, isn't home at night.
Yes.
And in order to, quote-unquote, get her kicks, she parades around the house with all the lights on, buck-ass naked.
She's walking around windows and stuff.
And so, obviously, Officer Sam Wood has taken himself a little peep show and goes on his merry way. You know, doesn't want to stay too long, as it were.
Overstay his welcome.
Doesn't want to overstay his welcome. And so, makes his way through the town and then comes across a dead body.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun. A murder in this town? My God.
Clutches pearls.
Clutches pearls. And it's the man that's gonna make the new factory in town. This guy was a millionaire. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And then the movie takes off from there. They go looking for their suspect, and they are like, it might have been a hitchhiker. Go check the
train station.
The train station. That's where they find Mr. Sidney Poitier, Mr. Tibbs.
And they just
obviously wrangle him the fuck up because this is racist ass South.
Yeah, and they're like, "You're the first black man we found. You got to be the killer." Mm-hmm. Round him up, frisk him down, take all of his shit. Don't even check for a badge. I also thought Officer Wood was just gonna straight up rob him, just take all the cash out the wallet.
Just take his money and
I thought that was gonna happen.
Bank that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And he takes him to the police station, and once the sheriff actually gets to talk to Mr. Tibbs, then
I think that's really where the movie begins, is when we finally get Sidney Poitier talking to the sheriff. Because I think that's like the meat of this movie is
their interactions.
Yeah, the interactions between the sheriff and Mr. Tibbs.
It really does feel like the procedural aspect around it is an excuse for these two characters to just encompass the same space and kind of talk about just each other, how they kind of view
just
things.
Just interact with each other, really.
Yeah, because the character of Mr. Tibbs, or Detective Tibbs, Virgil, he seems like a guy who, one, really, really doesn't want to be there for obvious reasons, but also kind of relishes the fact he's the smartest guy in the room. And the police chief, Mr. Gillespie, Sheriff Bill, he uses that against him because Gillespie knows he's not that smart, but he knows that Tibbs wants to kind of throw one over on all these fucking backwoods, good old boys, right? And that's kind of what rallies him in the midway through the
through the movie there that whole thing comes to a head, and Gillespie, played by Rod Steiger,
Archie Bunker, if you don't know. From All in the Family. He was a super famous sitcom back in the 70s.
Oh, I see.
Super fucking famous.
Okay. But yeah, so Gillespie kind of brings that to a head in the middle of the movie, talking to Virgil, being like, "Hey, we need you," because Virgil's gonna go home and report this place to the FBI.
Yeah, just leave it in their hands, and the feds come in, and they're gonna do the whole thing, and it ain't gonna be in no one's hand.
Then they're gonna flip the police department upside down, probably.
Yeah.
But Gillespie comes to him and it's like, "Hey, we need you, period. We can't do this ourselves. We can't possibly get through this case ourselves. We need your expertise and all this. And I know you want to pull one over on us. I know that you want to come in and show how much better you are than us all white folk."
He says that too, right?
It's something along those lines.
Yeah.
Not like that.
But, I mean, the southern accents in this movie are rather cartoonish, if I do say so.
You think so?
I mean, there's a few that are a little
who's got
sus.
a bad one?
I want to say Chief Bill does a little bit. A little bit. He kind of sounds like Foghorn Leghorn every once in a while.
Oh, only on occasion.
Only on occasion.
On occasion.
On occasion.
Shut the fuck up.
But yeah. So, but I mean, and that's a lot of how the themes come up to a head in the movie, right? Where these two characters are having these interactions, and sometimes they're very nice and cordial and really almost sweet moments, like when they're sitting in Gillespie's house, right? And they're having drinks, and you can obviously tell they've had a few, and they're just relaxing, kind of talking, right? And Virgil says, insomnia you can't cure, with a bottle of bourbon, and then Gillespie kind of tells him about his life, right? Ain't got no kids, ain't got no wife, he lives alone, he has this job as the sheriff, and he just kind of got rolled into it, and it's kind of this sad kind of life, a very lonely life. And Virgil, makes an offhand comment. He's like, "Look, I'm about as lonely as you are."
No, he says, "I'm lonely, but not as much as you are."
And that's when
something along those lines.
And that's when Gillespie flips right there and gets real racist, because he's like, "I ain't gonna take pity from somebody like you." And it's moments like that, right, where it's a very almost somber, very personal, raw emotional moment between these two characters. But as soon as any hint of aggression, or even Tibbs feeling a sense of superiority over Gillespie turns immediately. And that's a lot of what the interactions in this movie are. I mean, Virgil even uses that against Officer Wood when he asks him, "Hey, show me where your route was." And Wood's like, "I'll go in and ask the chief." And Virgil's like, "Yeah, you go do that. Wouldn't want the chief to think you got a mind of your own, doing things for yourself, being your own kind of man." And then Woods closes the door and he's like, "All right, Virgil, let's go on a ride." And they just roll on out. The manipulation of other characters in this movie is 90% of this movie. It's Virgil manipulating Wood and Gillespie kind of manipulating Virgil, and it's such a fascinating little movie.
Yeah, it is a pretty fascinating movie, just in the fact that it's a police procedural, but you can kind of almost leave that to the side and just take all the character interaction as that's the meat of this movie, right?
Yeah.
Especially stuff when Virgil and Bill go to meet Edcott, which is one of the best scenes in the entire movie.
Oh, by far. I love
really,
that.
really good sequence too, where they're rolling up to the plantation. There's all the black people out in the field picking cotton. It's unavoidable in this.
It's a very racially charged sequence.
Yeah,
and I love it because they roll up to the house and, you know...
Bill makes that, like, offhand comment, right? Being like, none of that for you, right? When he's talking to Virgil, you know, when they're riding up.
Fuck you eyes that Sidney Poitier projects in that moment is some hard fuck you eyes. Oh, man. But I love it, because once they get up to the house, and it's like, all right, business, and they go into the greenhouse, right?
No, they're led into the greenhouse by the servant, right? By Henry.
Yeah. And they walk in, and Virgil is, like, incredibly nice. He's like, oh, this is such a beautiful greenhouse, Mr. Escott. Oh, yeah, you know, I'd love to have a nice cold lemonade. That'd be lovely. And he starts getting in this, like, really kind of, you know, pleasant, very nice interaction with Endicott about orchids. And it's like, oh, you're a fan of flowers? Oh, I love them. And it's a very just nice, simple conversation until...
Well, no. They're still having, like, a pleasant conversation, like, even when Endicott is, like, mentioning, like, oh, these orchids, they're, like, colored people. They really need to be fed and taken care of.
Exactly. It's a nice conversation, and then the racism kicks in.
Well, the thing is that, what I think is really, like, a kind of, like, a surprising moment in the movie is that Virgil kind of, like, takes that. Mm-hmm. And, like, he doesn't say anything back to Endicott. I think he's trying to reel him in, you know?
Yeah.
And that only comes to a head when they go to leave, and Endcott's like, well, why did you come here? Well, why were you coming here in the first place? Because he notices that Virgil's taking a little bit of the root of the plant with him.
Mm-hmm. And that's when they finally just tell him straight up, well, we're here to question you about the death of, you know, the body we found, because he's a very rich man, you're a very rich man. We found part of your orchids.
Well, no.
Oh?
Well, no, what they say is that they don't mention the orchids or anything to him. What they mention is that, you know, you're like a rival businessman to the deceased, and, you know, records, your opinions are on record, and according to them, you wouldn't be the most mournful if he passed. And
then the slap heard around the world.
The slaps happen. They just go back and forth.
It's wonderful. It's a bloodbath.
It's two quite quaint slaps, and honestly,
yeah, like, these are 1967 slaps, right? But
so Endicott slaps Officer Tibbs, obviously, because, you know, this man is like the ingrained South. Like, there's no man more
old school Southern racist than this guy.
Like, what is the phrase that gets thrown away? Like, this guy is institutionalized racism. Like, I'm not one to use that term lightly, but this man is like the infusion of that. Like, there's no more institutional racism than this man. He literally runs a cotton plantation that was probably the same cotton plantation slavery. Like, you can tell, like, this guy is deep rooted here.
This guy is probably old enough to remember when he was a child and his daddy owned slaves, and the war of northern aggression. Mm-hmm. He would probably call it the war of northern aggression and not civil war. He is that guy.
Definitely. And he seems to have, like, a lot of power in, like, the general area, right, in this county, because he's like a big, huge company, you know?
Yeah.
And so he slaps Mr. Tibbs. Mr. Tibbs slaps back.
Right away.
Oh, and then it gets spicy.
And Cott is like, Sheriff, did you see that? Shoot this man dead.
No, he's, Sheriff, did you see that? And the sheriff's like, yeah? Well, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Well, there was a time where I could have you shot dead, he said. The plantation owner, Mr. Endicott, says to Virgil, and then Virgil storms off. And then Bill Gillespie just kind of shrugs his shoulders and leaves after him. Gillespie's kind of like, I don't know. I guess that's the way it goes.
And then Endicott, like, once he's alone, he turns and he starts, like, crying a little bit.
Does he?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that at all.
Yeah, he starts crying.
He's probably crying about the loss of respect down here in the South.
Maybe.
Like, I'm losing my grip on my people.
Dude, you know something crazy about that sequence? That was the whole reason Sidney Poitier did this movie.
Really?
That was one of his main reasons for doing the movie, because he saw this in the script, and it's argued whether he wanted it in the movie, like he lobbied for it to be in, or was already in the scripts he was given. But he saw that and was like, well, if this man slaps Mr. Tibbs, Mr. Tibbs has to slap him back, because no one should slap another man, right? And not get slapped back kind of thing, race, whatever. And it's a really telling scene because Tibbs is like, you're slapping me because I'm a black man, but we're still both men. That means I can slap you back. We are equals in this fight having here.
I feel also that Tibbs is almost kind of frustrated at himself for slapping back.
A little bit.
Because he's like really sure at that point that Edcott was the one that did it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where Tibbs seems like the kind of guy who is really kind of like reserved as a character.
He's really self-disciplined.
Yeah, he's a very principled kind of guy, and he's like, I'm here for the job. No matter what you do to me or whatever, I'm going to be here till the job is done.
He's somebody that can easily keep his thoughts to himself.
And then?
And then, he couldn't take it anymore. And this is where we get like a good part of the we're going to give some more spoilers here, but this is where we get a good part of the movie where Tibbs is kind of on like a vendetta against Edcott and doesn't realize until way later in the movie that that's personal, Edcott didn't do it.
Yeah, and this is even after he gets chased by the good old boys.
Oh yeah, I guess that's what we can call them, the good old boys.
If
the Confederate flag flying.
If you are driving a Plymouth Fury with the stars and bars as your license plate, you're now a good old boy.
You're a good old boy.
That is how you shall be referred to. But after Tibbs sees all these, racist people, and I think that's where his realization is, like, I hate all these, racist people around me, and then he kind of has that reflective moment is, I'm going after Edcott because he is a racist and cruel person, but he's not the killer.
Yeah. He's
doing the same thing that Gillespie was doing.
Yeah, he's it's like that self-reflective, like, no, I am now judging him because of, like, my prejudices towards him. Which is something that happens, that's, like, mentioned, actually, way earlier in the movie, when Tibbs and Bill Gillespie first meet, and they call Tibbs, officer. They call his
chief.
His chief. To, like, confirm that Tibbs is actually a police officer, because Bill Gillespie's like, I don't know.
I did that. Let's hold up. They paying you how much?
They paying... What? No. I'll call him up. And you know what his officer asks Tibbs over the phone? Are you too prejudiced to take on the job?
He asked Tibbs this.
Yeah, he asked Tibbs, are you too and doesn't Tibbs reply like no prejudices? Like
he's
no.
like, I have no prejudices, in this matter. I just really prefer not to be here.
Yeah. But that is prejudice. Like he goes through his own character arc here where he has to like realize that he is also being prejudiced against Edcott.
Yeah.
Even though Edcott kind of deserves it.
Oh, hell yeah.
But Edcott's not the man.
I mean, Randy, you are not necessarily a Sidney Poitier stunt double here. But if you were walking around and this guy slapped you, like, hands flying right away, right?
It would depend on the situation, but
in this context, if this man slapped you and said, "The dirty Irish, hata."
I would probably laugh, honestly. Like, I would be like, you can't be fucking real right now. I'd be like, God, what year is this?
And he's like, is this the 20s?
Like,
prejudice against the Irish?
Goodness gracious.
We've been white since Kennedy.
Shut the fuck up. That's so funny. But, so basically, it gives, like, Sidney Poitier's character, like, a nice character arc in the movie, right?
Yeah, and it's a really, like, subtle kind of, because it's not, like, a big dramatic one, right?
It's not as dramatic as, like, Bill's, right?
And I think even Bill's is a little played down. I think it's one of those things where, seeing how a lot of other movies handle this same kind of character arc, where it's the two diverging, a theological or whatever, mindsets, right? Or not theological. I'm trying to come up with a fancy fucking word. But, okay, this one's the racist, this one's not the racist. The white guy and the black guy, and they have to come together at the end of the movie, and it's like, they share the personal moment, and they're like, hug it out, man.
Yeah.
But in this, it's like, by the end of the movie, it's very like, good day, have a good one. They shake hands, and it's like that moment before he gets on the train. It's like, take care of yourself now, Virgil, and that's it. That's the whole arc. That's the only inclination that you're like, no, these guys actually did change.
Yeah, they kind of accept each other more now.
Yeah, and it's such a subtle thing, and it's perfect because it's not cheesy, it's not hackney.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like you don't expect Bill Gillespie to like really change all that much. He's an older man, but like just getting him to kind of acknowledge Virgil as being like
an equal,
at that last moment is like that's enough for him, like that is enough of a character arc for Bill Gillespie to kind of like redeem him,
Yeah. And even Virgil's arc, if we want to say, because I feel Virgil's more of an agent of change than having his own defined arc, because from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, I don't feel he changes all that much. He's still this very reserved, very tempered person. He's this person who's very smart, intelligent. He's a person who maybe he had his own prejudices against, these, southern white folk, but they had it coming to him. What can I say? But it feels more he's an agent of change in this southern town of Sparta, Mississippi, that by the end of it, they have a sheriff who's maybe a little bit more understanding, a little bit more accepting. A sheriff who...
Probably better at his job.
Probably way better at his job, because everyone in this movie says, man, Gillespie, kind of a shit sheriff. Kind of a shit sheriff. Which, also, by the way, like, Gillespie's a bad sheriff, right? Like, through and through.
Oh, God, yes.
Like, when the 16-year-old girl comes in and she's like, I'm pregnant with Sam's Woods' baby, and he was like, well, did he force you? And her brother's like, it's dead, you dumb motherfucker! Arrest his ass!
What? He was already arrested, let's be real.
Yeah, but for something else.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what do you mean? He's already arrested. But, I mean, hey, how many years he gets sentenced, that could be different. If it was forced or not.
Also, that whole sequence of her just explaining, the whole conversation with Sam and all that stuff. And I'm like, somebody read this out of a Penthouse magazine, didn't they? She was like, yeah, Sam was telling me about the cemetery and how cool marble feels on your naked skin. I'm like, somebody read this out of a porno. This is some fucking porno-ass dialogue. What the fuck?
What do you mean? If they got down and dirty, Dean, I don't want other than porno dialogue.
I know, it's just so fucking funny.
I don't know. To you?
Because of how...
Dean, statutory rape is funny to you.
God, shut the fuck up. No, it's how the actress playing Dolores is, like, delivering it. Because she's just like, well, I don't know. She's playing
a 16-year-old.
I know, but she's playing like a 6...
She's playing like this little defiant 16-year-old.
She is playing a 30-year-old, playing a 16-year-old in a cheerleader porno from the 70s. And I think it's the funniest shit in this movie. I'm fucking sorry.
It was kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie.
I saw that and I just could not stop. I'm sorry. But that's kind of the interesting thing about this movie, because it is through and through a drama, mystery, crime film. But there's parts of comedy in this movie. There's a little bit, and there's a lot of fuck yeah moments in this movie.
The slap.
But also another great thing.
Mr. Tibbs.
What do they call you up in Philadelphia?
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Fuck yeah!
Fuck yeah! Let's fucking go. Or where he's got the evidence or whatever to give to the FBI lab, and Gillespie asks him, "Give that to me?" No.
Well, what? Why not? He's like, "Cause I don't want to."
Because I don't want to.
And then they send his ass into the slammer.
Into the slammer. Then they got him to give him the false arrest.
False arrest papers, and they put Tibbs in the jail cell because of the intention they have arrested him for withholding evidence, and then while he's in there with the other guy, just plays into that shit like a fucking vice cop been on the squad for 20 years and starts pumping that kid for information.
That shit was slick, honestly.
That was smooth as fuck. Oh my god. I'm sorry we're describing it like that, but not like Sidney Poitier is the smoothest motherfucker in this movie.
The way his character, his character was written really, really well and acted really, really well.
Yeah.
Because all the stuff he does is like when he's like actually like on the case, when it's not just like him talking to other people, when it's like the police procedural parts of the movie, he's like really slick about everything. He knows what he's doing. And, like, he's, like, super charming to all the characters. Like, when he's trying to figure out about who in town does abortions.
He doesn't just ask who does the abortions. He asks who does the high-end ones.
Well, what he does is, you know, hey, if he goes up to the guy who got previously arrested earlier for theft.
Herschel from The Walking Dead, the old guy.
Really?
Yep, same dude.
He goes up to him and goes, hey, you know, if a man gets a woman pregnant around here, where does he go? Guy goes, well, I mean... You go to the barber, but barber,
He a 50% success rate.
And he goes, well, if I got some money to plan around, where else do I go? And then they kind of figure it out from there, you know, and then we get to the end of the movie. Blah, 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 blah. Oh my god, the end of the movie. Do you like the end of the movie?
Okay, so here's my thing about the end of the movie.
Before, like, the end, like that last...
Like the kill reveal and all that stuff,
yeah.
Right? I like the ending... And that, but when it gets into like the shootout with like the hillbillies, it really feels like at that point Virgil has like a little bit of plot armor because these good old boys just kind of listen to him as he's telling him that bitch got $100 in her purse.
No. He's telling the brother, the person with the gun.
Yeah,
He's telling the guy who actually cares.
Mm.
That's why he doesn't have plot armor. He's telling the one person who
would listen,
you know, who actually cares about what's happening, you know?
Yeah, so I would say overall, I think the ending works as a satisfying ending to the mystery. It might have a little bit of like melodrama to it, but I'm like that feels right for this kind of story.
It felt right. You know, it felt right for like the reveal, and although, you know, you can like be like, you know, why did the good old boys have to show up right then? You know, like one of those, you know, where it's kind of like it's the plot. Shut the fuck up.
It's a fucking movie, asshole.
Yeah, it's a movie, asshole. They show up because the script says they show up.
It's because the director paid these motherfuckers to show up at this fucking time, and he ain't getting another day out of these guys.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think overall, I think the ending works. I think that's a point I will give this movie. Every part of the movie works.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the movie that's like objectively bad. It doesn't look bad, doesn't sound bad. Everybody is working really well.
You know something that looked weird earlier in the movie that I just thought of is the shot of Gillespie in his car on the bridge when he's chasing after the thief.
Yeah. So I noticed.
You remember that shot, right?
I did notice that because we have Scott Wilson. You know, he's running across the fucking bridge, right? And then he's running from screen right to screen left. And then we see the sheriff, and he is facing to screen left, right? And I'm like, that's weird. Isn't he on the other side of the bridge? Like, he's on the Arkansas side, and he's gonna, like, stop him. But then it starts going, and it's like, oh no, he's behind him. He's running him down? And then it, like, switches back and forth. And it's really weird like that, because both the characters are facing the same direction on screen. Yeah. And it feels like they're both going... It's a really weird thing in that sequence, because before it's really frenetic.
Well, you expect him to be on the other side of the bridge, but then you kind of realize, oh, he's just gonna drive up to the guy.
Yeah, and he just kind of gives up.
Well, I mean, where's the kid gonna go, really?
Could have kept running. I was
talking about how they kept the shot for a long time on Gillespie as he's, like, speeding up at him. Because it's, like, almost like a minute of just the side view of the car.
I mean, it does go on for a little long. Does it go on for a minute?
It's like almost like a minute from when he's doing like the thing where he's calling it in, and then he starts speeding the car up, and you realize that he's just gonna drive at the kid. It's like, I don't know, 45 seconds, a minute.
That is a little long. That's kind of a weird run. I
felt like I was watching something out of like a Wes Anderson movie or something, you know? Because the character...
It's so flat.
Yeah, it's so flat. Like, the character is just there doing their thing. It's like something you'd see at like a theater, you know?
It's like a storybook.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I thought that was kind of cool. That was kind of neat. I noticed being like, this looks like Wes Anderson right here.
I mean, there's a lot worse things he could be compared to than Wes Anderson.
Well, I'm not saying it was bad. I was just saying it was interesting. It's one of these like shots. It's like the fast forwarded shot on the car.
Yeah.
Like the back of the car. It's or like the shot at the very end of the movie, which I don't know what the hell to call that. It looks like it's a miniature, but it's not.
I don't know. They got on the fucking helicopter and pulled out. But
like
there's a lot of shots in here that are like that.
Like the movie, I think plays down most of its cinematography, but it's got like little driplets around the movie. Little. I'm gonna spice it up here and there.
It feels like there's also a pretty strong work in the editing room.
You think so?
I think so, because like the chase sequence has a very like fast, kind of frenetic feel, and it's like cutting all around it, and we cut into this POV, and it crashes down and comes up, and it's all done in this like really jarring and frenetic way, but it's very smooth how we're going through, and we're following the kid Harvey, right?
Did they do a lot of that kind of like chase editing like that back then, where like it would like the camera almost like rolled over at one point, and like it's like crashing into the ground and stuff?
I
mean,
it
feels more like that'd be something like past French Connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I just got finished marathoning the Dollars trilogy, Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, and Good Man the Ugly, and they did that in like those movies, but those were like Italian spaghetti western kind of things, and those were done in like the mid '60s, '64, I think. So it was being done, but I don't think it was a very American thing to do.
To like have the camera like in contact with the floor.
I mean, not like that where it feels very handheld and it's falling down and coming up, because I mean, I think this is the same year, 67. This is the same year as Bonnie and Clyde, which is kind of doing it. And in Easy Rider, they're doing it a lot.
Yeah.
So I would say this is kind of like, this is like that transitionary period where we're actually starting to get like European influence in American cinema.
So this movie is kind of like on the cutting edge with terms of stuff like that. Like, it seems like a very kind of dry, like cut and dry kind of movie, but you can like kind of like taste the spice in there a little bit,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. This is definitely a movie where you can taste the spice coming in. There's a little bits around it, because watching the movie, I felt this is such a modern kind of film. It looks so like modern-ish. It's edited very well. The music, granted, sounds like something Quentin Tarantino would steal 20 years later.
Oh God, yes.
Right? But like that's how a lot of the movie felt. It felt like this very modernist take on film, and that's usually a sign that it's having influences, like subtle influences from like French cinema, Italian cinema, things like that of this era.
But it did feel enough like a movie of its time to where I don't think I would get tricked if I watched it without context and I was like, oh man, did this come out in like the 90s? Like I don't think that would happen.
That granted, that would be the only time you can mistake this for as terms of a quote unquote modern film. But I don't know. I felt like out of context, I would think this might have been like a 70s film.
Yeah.
Out of context, didn't know anything about it. I'd be like, this came out in like 75, 76? What the fuck?
I would think like probably like early 70s. 71, 72, something like that.
But 67?
67, it's pretty up there for 67.
And also, banger year for Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, he had 3 movies come out in the same year.
To Sir with Love, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and In the Heat of the Night. In the Heat of the Night won Best Picture, and the other 2 films were bangers.
Can we mention this yet?
Sure.
How Sidney Poitier did not win Best Actor for Into the Heat of the Night.
He did not.
Rod Steiger, the sheriff, won Best Actor in a leading role for In the Heat of the Night.
Deserved?
At first, I thought not. At first, I was like, they fucking snubbed my boy Sidney Poitier because he's black.
He won one like 3 years before this.
Well, I mean, hey,
he was nominated like a decade before this.
I know, but at first that was my first inclination, and then it's like, oh, he had already won an Oscar and that, and then we kind of got to discussing the movie, and I was like, like the Chief's like character arc in this movie, because you were right that like Sidney Poitier doesn't change all that much throughout the movie. He's more the force of the change. And so seeing Rod Steiger, Bill Gillespie, as like the more fluid character, the character that changes the most throughout the movie, that goes through the most, like, I can see that he would be the one to get the Oscar now, but it took a little reflection. It took a little bit of time, a little bit of chewing on the movie to get to that point. At first, I'm like, oh, why didn't Sidney Poitier get it? Like, he's obviously the main character, like, he's really good in the movie, but you kind of gotta, like, that's like the wine has just touched the
palate, right?
The wine has just touched the palate. I haven't swashed it around yet and really gotten the finer bits and gotten to Rod Steiger.
Yeah, I like that, right? He's like, oh, I haven't really like guzzled this wine bottle yet.
Yeah.
But I wonder how the cultural zeitgeist of the time, right? Post-Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Movement is still going on.
Still going on, but petering out.
Martin Luther King Jr. still alive, doing speeches. Malcolm X still alive, doing speeches. And this film comes out, film full of talking about racial tensions, about a deep southern town.
It is really in the zeitgeist of America at that time.
Do you think this
Without
movie
directly dealing with the movement itself?
Do you think this movie got its huge, Oscar nod, winning 5 fucking Oscars because it was the zeitgeist movie of 1967?
Probably, I wouldn't doubt it. And it did it in a very like a very respectful way, right? And it did it in a way that kind of
still worked as a movie.
It still worked as a movie. It did it in like a respectful way. It did it in a way that wasn't like too kind of like preachy, because the movie doesn't come off as like preachy.
Not at all.
It's like very serious, matter of fact almost. And I think I would give the movie a lot of credit there. And I think it really held its weight well with the situation it was in. It's a movie about race. It doesn't want to go too over the top. Mm-hmm. It's not like a blaxploitation movie.
No, God, no.
And it wants to have its main character be a more nuanced, like, black main character, right? Like, they don't want him to be completely described by the color of his skin. Right, yeah. He's not, obviously.
Not even a little bit.
He's mostly described by other people by the color of his skin, which, is the heart of racism right there.
He describes himself as a damn fine detective, which he is.
Which he is. He's not a character that's, like, one-dimensional. He's very multi-dimensional. He goes through his own arc where he has to deal with his own prejudices, which is something that I don't think, like, a lot of movies did at the time.
I wouldn't think so.
And I think it's like a really poignant, really good take on the whole subject matter there.
So, are you still holding strong that this is just a good movie?
Yeah, I would say it's just a good movie. Mostly because it doesn't do anything too excellently. Like, it doesn't really hone in too hard on anything other than, like, the acting and the main two characters. It's just good. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not giving enough credit. Like,
in terms of encapsulating its zeitgeist, I think it's great.
It's done a lot. Yeah, it did a lot there. It's kind of it's hard for me to reflect on something like that because obviously I was not alive in 1967.
Neither was I.
And it's really, really difficult to kind of get the zeitgeist of a time that you did not experience, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the things that is, like, the hardest to realize. Like, I can read a book about, like, 1800s England. I don't know how it was, though. Like, there's a lot that you don't get from merely watching a movie about the 1960s,
I mean, it's the thing where, like, we talked to our dad, or I talked to him in his house about, like, wow, you saw, like, Good and Bad the Ugly in theaters, and Enter the Dragon, and these, The Godfather, all these great, like, works of cinema in the movie theater. And I'm like, how was that even like? And he was like, I saw a lot of bullshit in the theater. Like, those were the couple good ones. He's like, you did not see the B-side of Enter the Dragon. Because no one remembers the B picture on Enter the Dragon. Like, that's kind of the thing with the zeitgeist. You don't know the zeitgeist unless you were there, because there's a lot of shit that just doesn't carry on through time.
Well, also, like, if you want to take an example from the movie, like, you're not sure what, unless you were alive in the 60s in the South, you're not sure what Tibbs can do. Like, what can he do by himself down there? Like, obviously there's black people living there that are alive.
Yes.
So what can he do and not do? What people in town are gonna be more accepting of him than others?
Because some of the younger people don't really seem to acknowledge him as being black.
They don't seem to mind as much. You know, and like anybody who seems to be like a business owner seems to mind a lot, but it's hard to tell. Like, you know, would, let's say, a hotel be more inclined to take you because it doesn't really mind as much?
Well, that's brought up in the movie because Tibbs says, well, I'm going to go to the hotel, and the mechanic, who's a black guy, just starts laughing and grabs a suitcase and like, we got somebody staying the night, and just like walks his shit into the house because he doesn't say it's like, oh, you can't stay. He just starts laughing. He's like, oh, you sweet man. Let's take you inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's honestly the best way to do it in the movie, because you absolutely know, and you know that the guy who's the mechanic already knows the reality of what it's like down here, and now Tibbs has to get used to that reality if he's going to be
himself.
Here. And it's a really subtle and interesting way to do it, and I think it's a masterful work.
Yeah, that comes across well. Yeah.
But anything else, Mr. Randy?
How do you
Ray
feel
Charles' great
how
singing?
do you feel about the town meeting scene with the mayor and like the business owners, right?
I thought they were gonna come in wearing hoods. What the fuck?
they were like, you know, oh, he'll be dead by Friday.
They had no faith in Virgil.
No,
zero faith. Oh my god, because it feels a little bit like a Klan meeting. They're just all the businessmen, all the rich folk in town. They're like, Sheriff, why the fuck is Virgil in here? Not calling him Virgil, calling him other things. You were letting Virgil do your detective work
that's
here?
When we get one of the only hard R N-word drops in the movie.
There's a few. There's a few hard R's in this movie. Yikes. Yikes.
Most of them are the Spanish word for black.
Yes.
And not the hard R's, but we do get some hard R's in the movie.
Yeah. But uncomfortable. I really felt like it might be the thing where it's like, you know, 2022 vision looking back in a movie in 1967. But watching it, I'm like, man, this is kind of uncomfortable with how they're talking about Virgil. And when they're talking to Virgil, and I'm seeing how he's kind of like taking it in, and he's a thing where he's like, you can only talk to me like that for so long before I'm be done with you. And it's a little bit easier to take in because at least I have that character to vicariously like work this scene through. But when he's not there, I'm just like, man, this is uncomfortable. All my racist uncles got to the past blue ribbon.
It's a yikes. Uncles.
We don't got any, but you know, in the context of the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think the movie's really good. But the question, Randy, the only question we ask on this podcast, consistently, it's AFI spot. Up, down, over, out. Does it stay or does it go?
You know, I have really only one question to pose to that question.
Yes, the counter question.
The counter question. You've activated my trap card.
Yes.
Is it better than Do the Right Thing? I hate to compare the two movies because they should stand on their own, but unfortunately we have a list here that means that they are not allowed to stand on their own.
I understand. Yes.
And they are both movies dealing with the same themes, which I think is something that we kind of usually group the movies together on this list. By their themes or their genre.
We've done that before.
Or do you think they're too different to compare?
No, well, okay. In terms of the films and the thematic elements, Do the Right Thing is much better at talking about the themes it wants to talk about. It has a much more nuanced take. It has a much more wide-reaching and holistic take. It has incredibly compelling arguments from every side. I think that movie is very much a better take on race relations in America of its time and through time as it has gone on. I think that movie is incredibly enduring. Whereas in The Heat of the Night, I think it's talking about its themes of its time. It's a very zeitgeist moment, but I do think In the Heat of the Night is an easier film experience
It's easier
to watch. Yeah.
I think it's a better movie for movie's sake.
Yeah. Whereas Do the Right Thing is a better piece of art.
Yeah.
And In the Heat of the Night seems like a better film. Because it's like, I can at least get enthralled in the mystery and get enthralled in the characters and the conversation and things like that. Whereas Do the Right Thing, it feels like everything is soaked in its themes and in its message. And it is about these characters who are flawed. Like, Do the Right Thing is about these very flawed characters in this very interesting neighborhood and this very charged situation. But In the Heat of the Night has like an ongoing plot and narrative and a structure to it that is just easier to watch as just a piece of entertainment. So
you think they're more or less comparable?
I would think so. If you were putting them on here, I mean, I think Do the Right Thing should go up, probably above In the Heat of the Night. I would think that's a pretty easy take. I don't think anybody's gonna get mad at me for that one. But I think In the Heat of the Night is a damn fine movie. I could definitely see In the Heat of the Night being somebody's favorite movie, like an unironic favorite movie. I think so. I think so. This could be somebody's unironic favorite movie, where it's a film, has a very great performance, very great central theme. It's also this story of these two people, as the film goes on, putting aside their differences to solve a mystery, and it has this backdrop of the very racist Southern 60s era. I mean, they tried to make a TV show about it called Lovecraft Country. They just put in giant monsters. Granted, Lovecraft Country was also not a very good TV show, but that's a whole other story.
They also made a TV show out of In the Heat of the Night.
They did, and that show ran for like 10 years. So I think In the Heat of the Night works very well as a film. Very well.
Reflecting off your take on the two movies, I think I'm going to have to go to the opposite of you.
You think so?
I think In the Heat of the Night, because it's more easily digestible to a wider audience.
To a whiter or whiter?
Wider. Not wider.
You might have slipped there.
Wider. Sorry.
To a cracker audience.
I think I pronounce them basically the same. A wider and wider audience.
You do pronounce them the same.
Holy shit.
Have you never noticed that?
No.
That's how you know we're from like some...
A wider and a wider audience.
No, you're saying it the same way.
My tongue is moving just merely millimeters, but it makes no difference.
That's...
Yeah, a wider audience. And so I think I might rank it a little higher than Do the Right Thing.
You think that really counts?
The thing though is that Do the Right Thing is really good, and I was really hoping to push it pretty far up this list. And if I'm seeing some competition for the same kind of themes,
well,
but they're not.
They're not even that comparable.
I know that's what I was about to get to. Is that they're not that similar.
They're really not.
I'm a very I'm a very organizational person, right?
Yes.
And I want to kind of box the movies up into different little categories and be like, these are the movies I compare to these movies, and these are the movies I compare to these movies.
These movies work like this, and these movies work like that.
And I think I'm just kind of I might have to just put them in two different boxes. I might have to split them apart. Have them stop fighting over who gets the last bit of cake.
Yeah.
And take them on their own. And I think in that case, I think I'm moving this movie down.
You think so?
I think I'm moving this movie down. Not far. It's good.
Maybe not at 75. Maybe.
Maybe
79, 80s? Mid 80s?
We've seen some damn good movies so far.
Yeah, we have. I mean, I'm of the camp that's Sunrise is better than this movie.
That's just easy as hell.
12 Angry Men's better than this movie.
Sophie's Choice better than this movie.
Goodfellas. I would say even
I like All the President's Men more than this movie.
Yeah.
I'm amazed by that movie, honestly.
That movie's PG.
It's PG. Oh my god, it's so fucking good.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think In the Heat of the Night, fine movie. Very good movie. It won 5 Oscars for a fucking reason.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I could see going down. I don't think it goes down to mid-80s. Maybe low 70s.
As I'm looking over the movies who's gone over so far, I think when we do our next top 10, it's gonna, or our next top,
I guess it'd be the top whatever.
Our next bottom 30.
I just call them milestones. Our next milestone.
Our next milestone, that it's probably gonna be in the 10th spot on that milestone.
I could see that. Because that's where I was thinking about it. Like, this is at 75. If this was at 80, I would be fine.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with it. If it goes below that, then I'm like, I gotta see the list. I gotta see some numbers again.
Yeah, we gotta crunch numbers again. Pull up that Excel spreadsheet.
But yeah, so I'm really impressed by the movie. As this being my first Sidney Poitier film,
he's good.
He's very good. I want to see more films with him in it. But if you can be asked to listen to our episodes, you can come listen to what we're going to be recording next week, which may or may not be Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, but if it's not, next week, Randy, we're going to watch The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, I've not seen this movie all the way through. I've only seen little bits and clips of it, and honestly, I don't even know that much about it. Like, I kind of generally know what it's about, but I don't know actually how things happen in the movie.
Really?
All I know is, like, the clips in the movie. I don't know how it kind of, like, progresses, right? I don't know how... I don't even know which order the clips would go in. Like...
This is fascinating because not only have I seen The Silence of the Lambs a bunch of times, I've seen all the Hannibal Lecter films and the TV series.
Like, I don't even know how he really fits into the movie.
Oh my god!
Like, I know he's there, but I don't know how he fits in.
I'm over here being like, you're about to see Sir Anthony Hopkins flexing for 15 minutes.
Oh really?
Because that's how long he's in the movie, and he won a fucking Oscar for it.
All right, well we'll see.
But yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
It's also going to be like the first true blue horror film we've seen.
Yeah, I guess. I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, people like to call it like a drama, crime drama. I'm like, everyone I've ever talked to casually says it's a horror film. That's going to be a question that's going to come up, right?
Should we mark that down, whether I think it's a horror movie or a crime drama?
Yeah.
I'll probably lean towards crime drama.
Because you're that guy.
I'm that guy. Like,
you're that guy.
I don't consider many movies horror movies.
But if you wanted to find that out, come and check us out next week. You can find us mostly on our YouTube channel, In the Frame. That's In the Frame on YouTube. And you can also find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. And, Randy, any last words?
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Alright, everybody. You have a good week.